It has been a long time since a show has punched me in the stomach the way that Overtake has. It is absolutely criminal that nobody is watching this show. Well, technically, Mal has it at like 4,500 members. I don't know how many of those are actually watching the show, but it's like 34th in the entire listing of the season, and that's terrible. Now, honestly, let's be truthful. There's a reason why it's as low as it is. One, it's a sports show. Two, it has a bunch of pretty boys. They're not necessarily pretty boys, they're just good-looking dudes. And yes, three, it's sort of a slice-of-life drama. Unless things are blowing up on a regular basis, people don't want to watch a show unless things are blowing up every 2 seconds. So it's got a lot of things working against it, but man, this is a show that honestly I was enjoying early on. I thought that it was doing a really good job of portraying the characters. It was very character-centric, not sports-centric. It looked really good. And I honestly had some feelings that some stuff was going to happen with certain characters. So before I actually get into spoilers, because I want to talk about spoilers, I want to get deep entrenched into the spoilers of this show because I want to talk about it for the 5 other people that are watching this that actually have watched it. But if you have not watched Overtake, please go watch it. It has a very high recommendation from me. It is literally one of my favorite shows of the season. But with that said, let me just jump into this. Honestly, early on, I had a feeling that we're going to do something interesting with Koya. Koya was a character who is a photographer, and early on in the show, he has sort of a shutter shyness. He has he's even though he's a photographer, he has troubles with actually clicking the shutter button. It's not that he can't take pictures. He can take pictures of crowds. He can take pictures of landscapes. He can take pictures of objects. It's just an individual person. He has a fear. And early on, it presents this as that it's caused by him taking this one photograph and people just destroying him on all media sources. Social media, news, everything. People were demonizing this guy. It was portrayed at the time as that he was at this natural disaster. He took a photo of somebody died, and everybody claimed he shouldn't have took a picture. He should have gone and helped them. And at the time, early on in the series, what I thought this was going to turn into is essentially the cause and effect, the aftermath of when somebody that is a photographer for something like a war or a natural disaster, yes, often people will criticize. Why is this guy in the middle of the battlefield taking a picture of a crying child when they should put their damn camera down, pick up the child, and leave? It's this idea of somebody being the eyes of other people so that people know what happened somewhere. That if there is a war and tragedies are happening, the world knows about it because this one person didn't put down their camera. They gave us their eyes at the time and they showed us something. It is a moral gray area. It is very difficult to stomach this idea of thinking. I admit that I do the same thing. Whenever I look at a photo of some terrible thing that's happening, my mindset immediately goes to, but what is that person doing? What are they doing? Why aren't they helping? Why aren't they doing something? Why aren't they shielding that person? It's because they are our eyes. It's because they have a role to play. And it's a very difficult role to play. And honestly, I feel really terrible for a lot of these people because they're seeing terrible things. And that plays into what Overtake essentially did with this character. It did exactly what I was hoping for it to be. I was hoping that it wouldn't be as kind of cheesy as you typically get with these shows. The person that has the deep-rooted trauma, and the entire time I'm wondering, who did they kill? It's like the joke story where this person absolutely hates this other person, and you're like, if they're gonna go on for like 6 episodes with this, that person better have killed their family because this is a irrational amount of hatred this person has for this other person. So you better deliver. Overtake delivers. In my opinion, Overtake delivers in more ways than I really even expected it to. It took something from a drama beat and really turned it into something that is both impactful, understandable, relatable, in a sense, and something that just had me bawling my eyes out. I hurt for the characters involved. And when a show makes me hurt for the character, when I this drawn character on the screen, when I hurt for them, it has impact. It has that impact that I'm looking for. But yes, for those who don't care about spoilers, or maybe you're looking for a reason to watch this show, what it essentially does is you get this point in which Koya goes to actually take a picture of a wrecked car. One of the competing people, they wreck their vehicle. He zooms in on that shot. He gets really close to the person's face, and the person in his mind looks up at them with terrified eyes. And this causes a relapse in his fear. Because the entire time, like I said, the assumption here is that because of the media coverage of this photograph he took a long time ago, he became camera shy. He became fearful of the backlash. And at this moment, you kind of see a hint that there's something else. He's seeing these terrified eyes. These eyes that have basically traumatized him. And it turns into him disappearing. He disappears for a while. We get a little insight into a couple of the characters, which I really did enjoy. I loved getting into Satsuki. He gets injured. You have Toshiki. He takes over. You have essentially Satsuki fearing the idea of being left behind, missing his opportunity to rise up in the F4 to F1 racing. You have Toshiki, and he's essentially finally learning what it's like to actually compete. He's always been the second. He's always been trailing Satsuki. And now he actually has to deal with trying to not be overtaken. And then eventually Haruka goes to find Koya. He's like, where's this dude gone? I need him. He's helping me out. He's giving me the courage I need to move forward. And he finally tracks him down in this small rural village. It's here that we get the true story of what actually happens. We get Koya essentially telling his story. And this is the fact that he went back to his hometown. He sees a bunch of people there that he recognized, hanging out with family members, old friends. And eventually he runs into this old man. And the old man's like questioning him like an old man would. Like, are you a cameraman? He's like, no, I'm a photographer. I don't take film. I take, certain shots. Not that it matters. And eventually he kind of shows the old man his pictures, and the old man likes it because he's going through all these memories. He's going, yeah, that's, Todd. And Todd, he's got a lot of energy for his age. He's talking to basically reminiscing. Like the idea of this rural town, this old fisherman town is sort of dying away. But yet he's seeing all these pictures of the people that are still there, people that he treasures. And it definitely sparks an interest in him. He's like, man, these are really good photos. And like, no, I just had really good subjects. Eventually, the old man calls over, I think it was his granddaughter, calls over this little girl, and they sit and they take a picture together. That's pretty much it. Jump forward to an earthquake. The unthinkable happens. An earthquake happens in this little small village, and the sirens are going off. Tidal wave is coming. Everybody's panicking. Koya's even panicking, going out there. And eventually he gets stopped. He's trying to get down to this lower area so that he can help the people down there. He knows there are people down there. He wants to go help them. And he gets stopped. No, you can't go down there because we got a tidal wave coming. The sirens are going off. You can't go down there. You're going to get swept away. That's why Koya picks up his camera. But here's the thing. Koya isn't taking pictures. He's not going, crap, what can I take a picture of because I can publish them? It's going to be great. He's using the zoom. He wants to see who's down there. And yes, sadly, he sees that little girl. That little girl running down the street, trying to find somebody to help her. Just rushing down the street, crying her eyes out because she doesn't know where to go. And Koya sees her. And in just a brief moment, she finally looks up at him. So, for some reason, her eyes look up exactly where he's shooting down from. Eyes terrified. And he panics. And that's the moment which that water comes rushing in. But just before it hits her, he panics and pulls away the camera, but he hits the shutter. Happens to take the picture, the last moment in this little girl's life. And that's what traumatized him. I like how they kind of emphasize it later on, as his ex-wife is pretty much like, I'm sorry, I thought the reason why you weren't taking pictures was a silly reason, as if people being mean to you on the internet is what caused you to not want to take pictures anymore. They ruined your life. Which, yes, kind of turns that whole thing of thinking you have the resolve for somebody that, oh, well, you're troubled by this. Don't worry, I know how to fix it. Just don't listen to them. But it's not what was bothering him. What was bothering him is this trauma that he couldn't overcome. This trauma that every time he looks down that viewfinder at somebody, he sees the face of that girl. This wasn't a regret for publishing it. It's a terrifying state that he has. He is traumatized. And I see that. When you witness something that is extremely horrific, thank goodness I've never seen something extremely violent in person. But I've seen a lot of things that are extremely traumatizing to me happen in my life. Seeing a person that you know, that you love, breathe their last breath. That is something that never leaves your mind. And there's some times where you can kind of see something similar, and you'll see that person. And that's sort of what Koya is going through. He's seeing this one thing that has been burned into his brain every time he picks up the camera. It makes it understandable. It makes it something that you can really, truly understand. But that episode didn't really kind of end just that. I think it's really incredible that it goes to sort of a redemption in a way. And the idea that he's in this town to go see the old man that he's seen before the whole tragedy happened. That old man wanted him to post a picture. Now, Koya says that yes, that saying that does technically make it feel better. But in actuality, he sort of wanted to do it himself because he wanted to publish that picture because while it only captures like a single moment of her life, it is a record of her life. And he feels like posting that and publishing that will sort of relieve him of that curse that he has. He was hoping that getting that out there will possibly relieve him of that terrifying fear that he has that's baked into his mind. So yes, it was technically partially the grandfather that wanted him to post it, but additionally the fact that yes, he felt that it would help him. And it honestly didn't. And yes, it technically told her story. It is kind of interesting that they kind of go into this little bit of side story that Koya goes into and explaining his rationality in sort of a different way. He goes into explaining the Saigon execution in Vietnam. This idea that this guy captured a photo at the split-second moment the bullet left the head of a Viet Cong man. And this was a captain that was being executed by a Vietnam general. And he goes into explaining the mindset of the photographer, this Eddie Adams. And Koya goes on to explain the idea that, yes, he took this picture, but then he regretted it. He regretted actually publishing it, and he actually rejected awards for it because he felt that it didn't tell the whole story. Adams was haunted by this, and is quoted in saying, "I was given money for showing one man killing another. 2 lives were destroyed, and I was getting paid for it. I was a hero." Later he said 2 people died in that photograph. The general killed the Viet Cong. I killed the general with my camera. He said he regretted not being able to get the picture of when that Viet Cong blew away a family. What Koya is saying here is that a camera itself, a photo, is a single still in a life. It doesn't tell what happens before it or after it. In the case of this execution, everybody's seen this guy bad, this guy good. Obviously, the guy was bound. He was executed without a trial. That's obviously, and Koya's not even saying that's right. He's just saying that knowing the full picture of the story technically tells you more. That a photograph itself doesn't tell you that this person killed a lot of people and apparently, possibly, killed an entire family. It doesn't tell that this general himself was trying to keep his troops from thinking that he could hesitate. There's a lot of story around the photo than just what's in the photo, despite the fact that you can say that the photo itself is showing something that's wrong. Koya is acknowledging the idea that when I took that photo, I'm not telling her whole life, despite the fact that he kind of would like to. But still, it is a record of her life. This one moment in her life. And from the grandfather's perspective, it seemed like he wanted it to be shown so that people could know the tragedy that happened that day. He wanted other generations, future generations, to know what happened on that day. Never forget what happened on that day. And then again, that's kind of one of those important things that comes from photography of disasters. We would never know. We'd never have a record of something. And some people would even claim that something didn't happen when it actually did. That little girl on that street crying her eyes out in terror is a sign that these things happen. That these natural disasters that claim so many lives happen. And unfortunately for Japan itself, is a regular occurrence because they're surrounded by ocean. And it's on them from all sides. Very close to places where people live. This little fisherman town. It's truly tragic, and I think the way that it was portrayed, I think, does massive amounts for it. It doesn't actually show when it actually happens to the girl. It shows when she looks up at him and she's terrified. She's crying her eyes out. But then it cuts away and it shows the terror in Koya's face. He is terrified of this. I can't believe I just seen the last moments of this girl's life. And it's kind of a nasty thing to the criticism that he receives. And yes, the criticism is, understandable that somebody would post that because they're technically making money. Just like Eddie Adams was claiming. He made a lot of money for showing this. He wasn't technically trying to go for that shot. With how long it takes for that shutter to go off, he was probably just capturing that pointing of the gun. So despite the question mark of when you hit that publish button, or if you don't press that publish button, the question mark really is in that capturing moment. This is something that Koya himself didn't want to see. This is something that this viewfinder gave him that nobody else would have seen. And seeing that terror, and I think the sound that they kind of included with it, all just kind of added to this emotional point that I think, again, Troika, please stay away from idolish stuff. Please stay away from boy band stuff, because when you do shows that are not about idols, which to be fair, I have not watched Idolish 7 or whatever it is. When they don't do idol stuff, they hit me every time. I loved Recreators. I loved I'll Know Zero, despite the second part. I think that their team does an excellent job at portraying certain things like this. And it's funny because I truly did think that this was going to probably be a lot bigger story for Koya. I mean, we got little hints at it earlier with the whole thing with Psycho, his ex-wife. She shows up after the disaster, and he's literally just, he's broken. This guy looks broken. Koya looked broken. And then again, this is the aftermath of watching this girl die. He's kind of helping, moving, supplies and stuff around to people that need it, and his eyes are just sunk in, and he looks like he hasn't had any sleep. And again, that's an obvious sign of somebody that has seen something that is extremely traumatic. It just hits. It just hits on every single level. And like I said, that's just Koya. To give people a perspective, I'm not just talking about Koya's story. It is a really impactful, 1.5 episodes. The rest of it is, like I said, Satsuki and his fears of being left behind, and him just pushing himself, pushing his injured body to try to get better. And again, Toshiki and him dealing with actually having to compete for once. Him actually having the overbearing expectations and anxiety that comes from being in the front. It's just a lot of really, really fantastic storytelling that I just cannot get enough of. I just hope that it nails the last, 3 or 4 episodes. I really do hope that this ending is just super good and it hits it with a really nice bookend, and I'll just eat it all up. So yeah, that's all to say that please watch Overtake. If you're not watching it already, please go watch it. It is super, super good, and I cannot wait for more. But anyhow, I just want to get on here and just I needed to tell somebody. So you 5 viewers, thank you so much for hearing me out. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment. Let me know if you're watching it, if you're going to watch it now, or if you're never going to watch it. And if you're watching it, let me know if it hit you as hard as it did me. But anyhow, if you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does, and y'all take care.